Welcome to the Stop Over Drinking and Start Living podcast, where high-achieving, goal-oriented rebel women come to learn how to live a vibrant and fulfilling life without requiring alcohol to get through it. No labels, no judgments, no saying you'll never drink again. Just real proven methods to help you stop rebelling against yourself with alcohol so you can drink less and do more. I'm your host, Angela Mascenik. Let's dig in. Welcome to episode 345, when your feelings don't match your expectations. Well, hello. Welcome back to the podcast. How's everybody's summer been? As you've probably been aware, we've been doing a bunch of summer rewinds and releasing some of my favorite episodes, and I hope you've enjoyed re-listening to those and revisiting those. I'd like to just normalize that it's okay to take a break sometimes. This is the longest break I have ever taken from work. And it was hard to get into at first, but then I really got into a good vibe with it. And I was really present with my family. We traveled back to Portugal for a month, and we really just lived and did regular everyday things. And my husband had to work a little bit, and I got to hang out with some family members and meet some new friends. And I got into yoga in my neighborhood and just did some of my Angela favorite things. And it was absolutely lovely. And thank you to Coach Steph for covering things while I was gone. I truly appreciate her partnership and support. And I'm so excited to be back. I am well rested and happy and excited. And I've been dying to record this podcast episode because it's really what I experienced in my return to my home. And when I was leaving Portugal, I thought for sure that I would be very unhappy coming back here. And I got used to walking everywhere in the city. We stayed in Lisbon and, walking to yoga and walking to go out and walking to see people and going to I walked the grocery stores in the same building that we had an apartment, and just like a complete lifestyle change. And I was really sad thinking about having to drive everywhere again and not looking out my apartment window and looking at the sun come up through these amazing, gorgeous streets with all these beautiful colors of the buildings and the architecture and like the cobblestone streets. And, I just kept visualizing a totally different scene. And I was not looking forward to coming back. And I thought for sure that I would be sad. Well, I came back and I suddenly realized that I really liked living here. And I got to see my friends right away. And I went to Costco and, I didn't have to navigate a foreign language every time I walked out the door. And everything was really easy because I knew how to do things. Every time we'd leave our apartment in Portugal, we'd have to navigate something, where to go, how to pay for something, the language, how to say things, getting lost, understanding, just a whole bunch of different stuff. And I didn't realize that when that was happening, that was a lot of energy, like a lot of thought energy to thinking through every little single step, right? And then when I got home, it's like this relief of being in your home country and just not having to think through those details. Like that was more relaxing. I got to see some of my favorite people right away, and I got a massage from my favorite place. And I was just like, right. And I was just like, oh my God, I love being here. I'm so excited to be home. So I was just like, oh my gosh, our mind will tell us a story. Obviously, I'm a coach. I help people look at their mindset all the time. And it always just kind of takes me by surprise when it happens to me. Still. And I'm like, wow, it really is insane. Sometimes the stories that we tell that we actually believe and buy into. And then I just like being wrong and pleasantly surprised about, I had expectations of how I would feel. And when I got into the actual circumstance of it, I didn't feel that way. So that's what I want to talk about in the podcast today, is when your feelings don't really match your expectations. Right? Have you guys ever had that before? So specifically when we think about drinking, right? So like you think, oh, drinking is going to be more fun, or I'm going to be able to relax, or I don't want to feel left out if I don't drink. So we're sort of attaching an emotional component to a future event with alcohol, right? And that usually drives us to make decisions to drink or not to drink. And usually if it's one like I'm going to have more fun, or I'm going to help, or it's going to help me connect with my friends, or I'm not going to miss out, that's going to drive us to drink, because we don't want to not feel those things, right? We want to feel fun. We want to feel connection, all of that. So that's driving that decision to drink. And so sometimes, though, when we get to that thing, we could feel disappointed because we overdrink, or we felt disconnected because we drank too much, or we feel disappointed in ourselves because we didn't follow through on a commitment that we made, whatever. Like that's when your feelings don't really match, or maybe the thing wasn't as fun as you thought it was, right? And like the alcohol just didn't do what you really wanted it to do. I had so many of those times. I just remember like I would chase the fun, like experience you might have had like in college or something, where you would go out and like the whole night would just be this vibe, right? Like super fun. You'd be drinking, dancing, maybe there's some boys or something that was happening. And, like it was just like one of those perfect, young, carefree, no worries in the world evenings, right? And it was all good stuff. That happened maybe twice in my life. But I would chase that feeling for decades, right? Like that's what I wanted to happen every time I would go out for a night of drinking. It was just like this carefree, high vibe energy, right? That was super fun and uplifting. And honestly, it never really was like that. There was a handful of times where it was, but we keep chasing that feeling, right? We want that feeling. So we'll do all these things to create it. And so I often felt that, like the expectations that I had, or what I really wanted to happen, especially with a night out, when alcohol was involved, that it didn't really match up. And then I would just keep drinking, trying to get to that elated high sense. Does that make sense? And then, of course, the next day I would feel like shit. And then my whole weekend would be ruined because I'd be hungover for several days. So that's a perfect example of like when your feelings don't really match your expectations, and that you're making plans about the future based on the feelings that you want to have. And just as a reminder, your feelings aren't created through your circumstances. Okay, so a vacation or an evening out, or a move or a change of job, like those things can give you like a quick hit of a different feeling, but they actually don't create your feelings. Your interpretations of those things, of those circumstances, are what actually create your feelings. So we don't really want to make changes or plans in the future based on how we think we will feel or don't feel. Because feelings aren't attached to actions, they aren't attached to circumstances, right? Feelings are internal, and that's based on your interpretation of situations that you're in or things that you do, right? This is how people can like go out and drink all night but not feel bad about it emotionally, because they don't have negative thoughts about themselves about it. They're just like, oh, whatever, that happens sometimes. Right? And they don't feel shame and disappointment in themselves because of how they interpret that situation. Or if you think about a family member, a couple family members, and there might be somebody who's super annoying in the group, right? Or maybe there's a friendship circle, and like maybe there's one person who doesn't care, like this, it doesn't bother this one person, like, oh, that's just Joe being Joe. But there's a few people who are like, oh my God, he's so annoying, right? It's just your thoughts create your feelings, right? Your thoughts create your experience in these events. So when you think about this emotional mismatch, or when your expectations about how you will feel don't match, it's just because you have different thoughts, right? So when I got home from Portugal, my thoughts were, I love living here. It's so nice to be home. Where I thought that I would be thinking, oh, this sucks to be back here. I want to be back in a city lifestyle, right? I didn't think that, so I didn't feel that. Does that make sense? So I want to invite you to really think about the main point here is really think about we can't really know our emotions like in the future. We don't really know how we're going to feel about something in the future, okay? Because our thoughts change all the time, circumstances change all the time, and they're not that predictable feelings, right? Because we can have an emotional response one day on something and a completely different emotional response on something else. I'll tell you another story personally. So my friend Josh, I've actually had him on the podcast, Josh and Dan. It was last summer, maybe 2 summers ago now, and we talked about friendships. Josh is turning 50 next week actually, and he and Dan and I, like when we were together, I don't even know if it was 2 years ago, we're like, you should do something big for your 50th birthday. And so Josh decided that he wanted to do a cruise to Greece, like in Greece, on Virgin. And so Dan and I were like, heck yeah, we're there. So Dan and I signed up to go on this cruise. It's adults only. It sounded fabulous, blah, blah, blah. And this was like a year ago. Well, some things happened in my life that made this trip really difficult and nearly impossible for me to attend. So I canceled. This was about 4 months ago. And they accepted that because of what was going on. And then Dan was going to try to find a friend or his partner to fill my spot. And then he did. And then things kind of fell apart with him and his person that was going. And so Josh was sending me texts and begging me to reconsider. And I was in a emotional state of high stress. And he was, trying to guilt trip me into going on this cruise. And I was just like, no, it's a hard no. I am not going to be able to do that. I do not have the capacity for that. Like my boundaries were very strong. And I'm very proud of myself for doing that. I could not, like in the future, I could not imagine me like doing this trip to Portugal with the family, coming home and then flying out again 2 weeks later to go on this cruise. And there's a lot more to the backstory. I don't think it's that important. It's just that I'm trying to demonstrate when our emotions change as well. So not to rely on them as a deciding factor. I said, no, I cannot go. I will not go in a nice way. And they finally accepted it. Well, fast forward another month or 6 weeks. And then things changed with Dan again. And Dan texted me, my partner's not able to go. Do you want to go to Greece? And this was like 2 days after we got home from Portugal. And in that moment, I'm like, interesting. What? And like, it didn't sound terrible to me. And it actually sounded like, well, could I make this work? I mean, I'm free technically. So I looked at work and I asked Coach Steph and talked to my family about it and really looked at flights. And, I'm like, if this feels easy, I might be open for it. And like, lo and behold, everything just opened up and worked out for me to be able to go. And so I said yes. And it's just wild that like it went back to the original plan and that our emotions change, even though my circumstances really didn't change. It's just that my capacity had changed. I had more ability to think about allowing something like that to happen. I wasn't focusing on trying to do a bunch of different things. I wasn't stressed out. And so my mind was able to visualize this being a good thing. And so I changed my mind and I said yes. And so now I'm going to Greece, which is just wild to me because 4 months ago, I would have gotten a tattoo that said, I am not going on that cruise. Okay. That's how believable it was to me. But things shift and things change. And I don't regret any of the decisions that I made. I think it all worked out magically and perfectly, exactly the way it should. And I'm even more excited about going now than I would have been if I had pushed through that decision and, like made it work somehow. And so I want to just highlight to you that our feelings and thoughts change all the time, right? And if you're trying to think about something in the future, and you recognize that you might be making a decision based on how you think you will feel. You might just want to question that because our feelings are unpredictable. They change all the time. Our thoughts change all the time, depending on what's going on in your life. If you're stressed, if something is tragic happening, if you've got a big change going on with a job or a move, all of those types of things influence our ability to handle things, react to things, and it definitely influences our thoughts and feelings. So if you are faced with a decision about something in the future, especially around alcohol, and you're trying to track towards how you think you will feel, I would just start questioning that. So the best piece of advice I can give you is make decisions based on the results that you want to have, not how you will feel. I love talking about feelings. I think feelings are the most important thing to focus on when you're thinking about changing your relationship with alcohol, but they're not good strategies because of how unpredictable they are. So if you are faced with making a drink plan or trying to cut back or taking a break and changing your relationship with alcohol, you want to stay focused and engaged with the outcome that you want to have, not how you think you will feel. Because if you stay focused on how you think you'll feel, if that's deprived, left out, unhappy, bored, right? That will not get you very far because your brain won't want to sit in that discomfort of those emotions, and it will try to say, it doesn't matter. You should just drink. It's too hard, blah, blah, blah. So just focus and let your decisions be guided by the outcome that you want to have. Your feelings will change. You might get to that event and realize that you're going to have it's way more fun without drinking, or your conversations would be way more interesting. Let yourself be delighted that you were wrong about how you thought you would feel. Give yourself that opportunity. I think it's so fun when we can get into those moments in real time and recognize I made way more of a big deal out of this and thought this was going to be a terrible, torturous experience, and it really was. I'm so glad I was wrong about that. And I'm really glad that I didn't make a decision based on how I was going to feel, right? Because if I did, with this Portugal example, I probably never would have came back. I would have hired a company to pack up our house and move us over here. So all that to say, make your decisions based on the outcome you want to have, not so much on how you will feel. And you got to learn how to feel your feelings. You've got to be aware of them. You got to learn how to get into your body and breathe and notice and accept your humanness with your feelings, so that when you are faced with big decisions in your life, whether it's around drinking or not, you know that feelings are normal. You know that no matter what happens, you're always going to have feelings, good ones and bad ones, and everything in between. And so making decisions around feelings is probably just not going to get you where you want to go as fast as you want to get there. All right, my friends, I'm super excited to come back and be with you this fall. And I've got a lot of crazy ideas floating around up there, and I can't wait to explore them with you. And of course, if you want my help to stop over drinking and start living, send me an email, hello@angelamascenik.com, and we can talk about it. All right, have a beautiful week. Bye for now.